Unlocking international Amazon marketplaces can like double or even triple your e-commerce revenue. And we're going to pay a special focus on one particular problem that most Amazon sellers face when they want to expand globally. And that is how to optimize your Amazon listing effectively. And so by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for international expansion, including having a game-changing tool that will help overcome the language barrier. So let's get into the video. Now, the European marketplace generates over 100 billion euros in business per year. So first, let's go through the step-by-step roadmap for expanding internationally. Step 1 is to select, of course, the right marketplace for your expansion. And this decision needs to be data-driven and not based on your hunch. Analyze product demand using tools like Helium 10, Jungle Scout, etc. And this is because you might find hidden or like surprising opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily consider in your own marketplace. For example, a product that might be underwhelming in the US may actually be a bestseller in Germany. You also need to carefully then consider the logistic costs. Proximity matters. For example, US businesses trying to expand globally will find it a lot easier to expand into Canada compared to Australia, even though they both speak the same language. You should also then evaluate the levels of competition in each marketplace as well. In emerging Amazon marketplaces like in the UAE or in Singapore, the top listing for like a particular keyword might only have like 50 reviews, but if you compared that then to the US market, they might have thousands of reviews. You also need to make sure that you do the proper research into that specific marketplace's regulations. There might be some products that are easy to sell in the US, but if you then wanted to sell them in Europe, you might need like a specific license or permission to sell it. Which brings us then to step 2, which is dealing with like the tax and then legal requirements of that marketplace. You'll probably need to register for VAT in the European marketplaces. The threshold for mandatory registration will vary depending on the country, but by being proactive, then you can just make this whole process simpler. There are other than compliance requirements you'll need to follow, for example, like GDPR across Europe as well. And also during this step, you need to set up banking for international payments. And this can end up actually saving you quite a bit of money rather than just relying on Amazon's basic currency conversion. And of course, there's trademark and copyright research that you need to do as well. If you do have a trademark product in your current marketplace, then you'll need to register for a new one in the marketplace that you want to expand into. The next step is then adjusting your pricing strategy. You need to account for additional fees and taxes, for example, like the VAT that we mentioned earlier. And you should probably also consider like pricing psychology in these marketplaces. In the US, for example, ending your price in like 0.9 is often a better strategy. But then in other marketplaces like in Japan or in Asia, ending your price in a 7 rather than 9 can actually be more effective. And in the same manner, you should probably also consider like the different types of promotional seasons as well. For example, Japan has like a golden week and Germany has like a summer sale season. And so these might be better opportunities than just relying on like the global Black Friday season. Step 4 is then solving the logistics and fulfillment. Just like in your original marketplace, you'll need to consider whether FBA or FBM is your preferred method of fulfillment. Now, as you're aware, FBA simplifies this, but if you're not selling in the US, then these prices can be 30 to 40% higher compared to your original marketplace. And you need to also ensure that you plan your inventory distribution methods so that you avoid stockouts and not actually then able to fulfill the orders. And this is pretty key, particularly in European markets, because European countries often have stricter and more favorable return policies for customers than compared to the US. So once we've completed all these steps, we move to the final one then, which is optimizing your Amazon listings for these new marketplaces. And it's actually this step which a lot of Amazon sellers struggle with and fall at this hurdle. And this goes far beyond just basic translation. You need to research local keywords, understand like the cultural buying preference of that marketplace, and then adapt your selling points for each market. For example, there might be a feature of your product that is considered like a key point in the US market, but in the German or maybe like the French market, it's not actually considered a big deal. And so really, it's this step that can actually make or break your success when expanding globally in Amazon. You might have an excellent product locally, but when you expand globally, it seems to fail. And this is because you're probably not actually optimizing your product properly for that new market. And there are plenty of common mistakes that we've seen people make when trying to launch their new product into a new marketplace. The first is just using basic machine translation without actually optimizing the listing. Google Translate is great if you're trying to understand a menu on vacation, but it can fail miserably when trying to create an optimized listing that will convert. Another mistake is just simply translating your keyword into the new language. And it might not be even a complete language change either. It can be just a colloquial way of saying things. For example, someone in the US will say trash can, but then in the UK, someone will say rubbish bin. These are the same things, but the difference is more of a cultural translation rather than a literal language translation. And on a similar note, another key difference that a lot of Amazon sellers make when trying to expand globally is not using cultural situations in their product descriptions. For example, a German customer will want like really specific details in their descriptions, while an Italian customer will probably want something that connects with them more emotionally. And ultimately, what happens if you get these translations wrong is not only will you not rank properly in the search results, but if you do manage to sell something as well, the return rates will be substantially higher because you're not meeting the customer's expectations. And so getting your listing right isn't just about accuracy. It's about really optimizing it for that specific marketplace to drive results. And sellers who master this challenge will see huge, quick increases in their sales and overall business growth, whereas those who don't will end up having to pull out of these marketplaces early, believing that the opportunity wasn't actually there when the real problem was in their listing. And so when faced with these translation challenges, sellers will typically choose a couple of these solutions, all of which have specific drawbacks. Now, the first one is something that we just talked about, which is using like Google Translate. And this can be good, it's quick, it's free. But what happens is you end up having a very robotic translation. It can literally be the word for word translation, which might not actually connect with the customer in that new marketplace. And if the translation is actually bad, it's going to harm your brand, not even long term, but short term too. And plus, using these machine translation techniques will often mean that you'll miss the cultural context around it as well. You could end up just being completely invisible in the search results, regardless of how accurate your translations turn out to be. And so to avoid that, sellers might then turn to another solution, which ends up being hiring a freelancer from like Fiverr or Upwork to do the translation for them. Now, if the service provider is actually fluent in the language that you want the listing to be optimized for, then this can obviously be a better solution than the machine translation technique, but this then comes with its own set of problems. For example, the service provider probably doesn't know much about the Amazon algorithm, and so the translation they do provide won't be optimized for the search terms, which again will harm your visibility and then also your conversions as well. Which then brings us to the final traditional solution, which is using a specific agency that deals with e-commerce translation services. Now, don't get me wrong, the quality of these translations will be very, very high, but it comes at a cost. You'll probably be charged hundreds of dollars for a single listing. And so if you're a seller with lots of products that you want to launch into your new marketplace, then the cost of translating all of these listings can really start to add up. And these agencies will then require a few business days turnaround time for each listing. And so if getting into a new marketplace quickly is important to your business, then you're just going to lose a lot of time waiting around for an optimized listing. And so ideally, you'll actually need a solution that is quick, like Google Translate, the quality of a translation from someone who speaks the language, combined with the expertise of an Amazon specialist without the associated high costs. And this is the exact problem that we set out to solve and is why we've now developed AMZ Lens. And it solves all of these problems into one single solution that can take just a few minutes to produce a quality listing. And here's how it works. Simply enter your ASIN, select the target marketplace and the language that you want to convert to, insert then any details of your listing and simply click optimize. And the output then you receive is a completely fully optimized listing for that marketplace in just a matter of moments. And once you start using this tool in your global expansion strategy, you won't want to use another tool because it's so simple, so fast, and actually really, really accurate. And as you can see from the listing that we've just done here, we've got the title, we've got the bullets, we've got the description, and then we've got the back-end search terms as well. All fully optimized, all optimally translated for the marketplace that we've chosen. And so if you want to get started using this tool, then just click the link in the description below. International expansion is the biggest opportunity for Amazon sellers. And while the process does have its challenges, the listing optimization challenge no longer needs to be an issue because of this tool. And so by following the roadmap that we talked about at the beginning of this video, plus then implementing the AMZ Lens tool, you can successfully expand into any Amazon marketplace without knowing anything about the language or having any local expertise. As I mentioned earlier, if you want to get started using the AMZ Lens tool, then just click the link in the description and get started now. Thank you very much for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.